Yesterday, Anthropic launched Claude Code routines, which are cloud-hosted sessions that run on a schedule, on their infrastructure, not your machine. And this is something I've been waiting for like months at this point. It's one of the things I've wanted the most out of Claude Code, and I think it's the single biggest supercharge, to the way I build systems with it. So I immediately set this up and I built two routines right off the bat. One that pulls my YouTube analytics every morning and then compares them day over day, and then another one that scouts every competitor in my space, including YouTube and Substack, and then it researches what's trending with Perplexity at the same time to generate content ideas filtered through my entire brand strategy, so unique to me. I built both of these and they both ran this morning, both worked perfectly on the first try. And the coolest part is, for example, the scout routine one that ran this morning basically told me to make this video that I'm making right now after I identified Claude Code routines as the number one time-sensitive topic for my channel at this moment. So in other words, the system I built yesterday is already telling me what to build today, right? And Claude Code, or Claude, or Anthropic has been on an absolute tear lately, just like always. Yesterday, they launched these routines, and then today, as you can see, they completely redesigned the Claude Code desktop app UI. So you can see that all here. We're going to save that for the next video. Today's going to be all about routines, but you are going to see this new UI as well, which is incredible. And in many ways, I already worked on the Claude Code desktop app besides like the terminal or VS Code, and this just improved it dramatically. All right, so in this video, let's just walk through both of the specific routines I built, what routines are, how the reports that mine generated, how you can set up your own, and then 5 things that I learned the hard way, so you don't have to waste time when setting it up, because nobody has time for that with how fast Anthropic is shipping. So let's get into it. So what are these new Claude Code routines? Well, they're cloud-hosted, Claude Code sessions that run on Anthropic's infrastructure. This means your laptop can be off, it could be closed, it could be in a bag. You don't need a Mac Mini to run this anymore, which is what I was doing before, locally. You don't need any of that. All right, and we're going to have different trigger types here. So we have a schedule where you can run it on a reoccurring cron schedule, just like a normal, perfectly good schedule job. We have a GitHub event where it can run when a GitHub webhook event fires. And then you can also trigger it from your own code by sending a post request to the API. So those are the 3 trigger types. I'm using just scheduled right now for my use cases. This is currently available on, pro plans, max plan, team, enterprise plans, and you get 5 to 25 daily runs depending on your tier, okay? And the way this is going to work is that the routine is going to clone your GitHub repo, and then it's going to run the task in the cloud and then commit and push the results back to the repo. So, in this case, you need to have a GitHub repo with your system running. And it's also worth noting that this is in research preview right now, so it's new, it's early, but with that said, it works incredibly well. So if we go back over into Claude Code desktop app here, this is what the new interface looks like, and you're going to find routines here in the top left on your sidebar. So now we have new session, routines, customize, more. We're going to go to routines. Once you click routines, it's going to pull up all the routines you have running here. You could create your templated routines that can be kicked off on a schedule by API or webhook. You could set this up, through the terminal. You can also set it up through Claude Code, the web platform online on the browser. But I find the best way to set this up is right in the desktop apps UI. It's the best. So we could see all of them here. We can also see a calendar, which is awesome. You can see every task you have for every day. All right. And then here you're going to click simply a new routine, and then you're going to have local or remote. We're going to run the remote one. That's the whole point here. You're going to give it a name. You're going to describe what Claude should do in each session. If you're familiar with scheduled tasks before, you are given the prompt that is going to fire off at the beginning of this session. So at each scheduled time, or however you schedule it or trigger it, this automation, it's going to kick off by sending this prompt to your session or to your Claude Code repo, and it's going to kick off a session there, right? So we're going to give the prompt. You're going to need to select a repository. For me, I'm running this in, my repository, which you're going to see, which is basically like my all-purpose, work agent, my co-writing, co-working agent for everything, for all my businesses. So you're going to select your repository. You could choose the model that you're using. You can choose extended thinking. You also want to keep this on default for the environment. Select your trigger, and then the cool thing down here, we can also control exactly what tools or connectors it has access to, as well as what permissions it has, all right? So Claude can use all tools from these connectors, including writes, without asking for permission. So just know that this is basically running on bypass permissions. So make sure you know what you're doing here. You only give it access to what you want, because it will run in God mode with bypass permissions. It's automatically has listed or connected to all of my MCPs or all of my connectors I have. A lot of these are custom ones I built. So you can choose which ones, you can add new ones, for example, new custom ones, or search the ones you have available. You could take some off, right? So that is simply how it works when you are setting up a new routine. Very simple, very straightforward, very clean, very organized. So the first routine I built here that I just want to showcase today is the daily YouTube analytics, which I can click and see here. It's a more simple one. It's just for daily, pulling my daily YouTube analytics. And I want to show you this one first because it's really just a clean example of how the whole thing works before we could get into some more complex ones. For me, this is what I always think about when these cool little automation features come out with Claude. The first thing I always think about is like reports and analytics and stuff that's very straightforward with connectors that can give me these daily briefings, which helps out, so much. So let's look at that here. You can see we can edit the one that's already set. So you're going to be able to see exactly what I did here. We have run the daily YouTube analytics skill, which I'm going to show you here in a second. Pull my YouTube channel stats and last 10 video performance compared to the most recent report in its skills, and then write today's report and commit and push it to the main branch. If no previous report exists, create the baseline. I'm using Sonnet 4.6 because this is a simple, straightforward analytics task. I have my repository chosen here. Like I said, my agent's called Proxy. I have that all hosted on GitHub. I have this running daily at 7 a.m. And for connectors, I just give it access to my custom YouTube connector because that's all it needs for this here. So now that you know what my routine setup looks like, I want to show you something very important, for my setup here for it to work. And that is the actual skill that it's going to use. So we're going to come here over into my repo here on GitHub for Proxy, which is my agent. And you're going to see the, system built out here. We have the .claude folder with the agents and the skills. We have my .memory folder, which I have set up. We have my inbox, which basically acts as an inbox to my agent. I drop stuff in there for it. And then I have workspace, which is all of my content, my products, my, content wiki, assets, Substack, YouTube, all of that stuff. But what we're really concerned with here is the .claude skills. So when you look at the skills here, I put two skills in. The one we're doing for this routine that I'm showing you right now is the daily YouTube analytics. So if you click this skill, we could see what it looks like, the actual skill and what it tells it to do. So, the routine, you could write a really good prompt on the routine, but I highly recommend, if this is a standard process, building out a skill, a very specific skill, and then simply in your routine prompt, all you have to do is tell it to run that skill, and it makes it, way easier than trying to write out a huge, complicated, long prompt here. Always use skills when you can. So taking a look at what my skill looks like, this one pulls the channel stats. It takes a look at my channel ID. It finds yesterday's report. It pulls fresh data from my custom YouTube MCP. It calculates the deltas. So it's going to look at yesterday's report and then calculate for each one, the channel, the per video growth, and flag some standouts. And then it's going to write this report and commit and push to my repo. So we have the skill built out. And then the other second part of that skill right here are the actual reports. So we can see the ones that it generates. So let's run this, and then you're going to see exactly what happens. So this skill is scheduled, right? The next run is for tomorrow at 7 a.m., but we can also just manually run it as well. So when you click, manually run, you're going to see here, I'm going to show you what it looks like when it ran this morning. We have this here. Run the daily YouTube analytics skill. Just paste the prompt here in the session. It's going to initialize the session, set up a Cloud container, clone the repository, run the setup script, start Claude Code. We can see and confirm here that it used the correct skill, which is the daily YouTube analytics. All right. And then it checked for the existing reports. It pulled it, and then it pulled all these key takeaways from my YouTube videos. And then what happens now is it's going to go back into that skill, and it's going to drop the report here. So you can see I now have this report for this daily report for which is today, April 15th. I can see the channels. I can see the total views. I can see the total videos. It's going to list my 10 last videos, give me a snapshot of the views, the growth, standouts, and notes. All right. So that is how my YouTube analytics routine works. Now, when I'm back here into the UI of Claude Code, I can come here, I can click on it. And right now it's just like a manual kind of situation where I have the routines listed down here. I click it. I can, let's see here, go to routines. I can see everyone, right? So tomorrow it'll be listed for tomorrow's date, next date, and so on. And if I want to discuss or look at these reports, I can just click and talk to my agent, specifically about that report. I can also in any session, any chat, ask Proxy or Claude, to give me, my most recent reports. I can see it in my actual folders. But what you can also do, and which we'll do later in another video, is you could set up, your messaging communication pathway between you and Claude, whether that's Discord or Telegram, because then it could take that report and, maybe text you every morning, message you on Discord or Telegram, and let you know what's going on. But just to show you how simple it is, how easy it is, and incredibly powerful it is to set up these routines for daily tasks like this. And this has a serious compounding effect, right? So like tomorrow morning, it's going to run again. It's going to read today's file, calculate what changes overnight. Every run is going to build on the last. Imagine after a week, after a month, after, 6 months, I now have daily reports on my YouTube analytics that can be processed and analyzed by my agent for future content or whatever, for diagnosis of what's going on in my content businesses. Now, this analytics routine is useful, but the scout routine that I built, which I want to show you next, is really cool because it's going to kind of get a little bit crazy here. It's the one of the ones I'm more excited about, and it's the one that actually told me to make this video today. Same situation here. You can see I already have it built. I have this one called the Creator Scouting here. So what this one's going to do is run my daily Creator Scout skill. It's going to read a watch list of content creators. It's going to pull their latest content, research trending topics, compare it to yesterday's report, write today's report, etc. Same situation here, but completely different use case. I gave it access to Firecrawl connector to scrape web pages. I give it access to Substack, my Substack, access to YouTube to pull YouTube videos, and Perplexity to do deeper research. Same repo here. This time we're using Opus 4.6. I like to use Opus 4.6 for this more like brainstorming, strategizing about content. Sonne's better for, my analytics and stuff that I don't need any thinking power for that, right? Also running daily at 7 a.m. These are all custom connectors here set up. So if we go back to my repo on GitHub, we can see the second skill I have here, which is the Daily Creator Scout, all right, that we are invoking here. I'm going to drop this below as well, so grab it below if you want to do this yourself. This is going to create a daily creator intelligence report. Now, how this one is going to work, it's going to read a watch list that's here in the skill, which is going to have a list of creators there. It's going to pull the latest content from each one and then compare the most recent report and then write today's report, right? This can be triggered daily, but I can also trigger this manually. So for example, if I know a big, something big drop that I want to cover, I can, trigger this. So it goes and looks at what other creators are talking about. Here in the same skill file or in the same skill folder, we got the skill, we got the daily reports, and then references. So if you take this skill below and you use it yourself, what you're going to want to do here is replace this watchlist.md with the people you're following. So this morning, I just went and found some of the top creators on YouTube when it comes to Claude Code, also on Substack. So you can see that this is what the creator watch list looks like. So I added some names you probably know here on YouTube, like Mark Kashef, for AI strategy, Claude Code deep dives, Nate Herc for Claude Code, Jack Roberts, and then on Substack, Nicholas Cole, Ruben Hassid, These are all top creators that I follow, that I, find inspiration from when, creating content, seeing what's trending, all really, really big names, right? So you would fill this out with your own creator watch list, and then the skill is going to invoke and look at that for you. So coming back here to Claude Code, same situation here. I ran it this morning, and you can see here, when we ran it, it started by syncing the repo. It found the skill. It found the watch list. We could see everything it's doing here. It searched the skills. It found the watch list. It realized that I had no previous reports, so it created the first baseline one. It tracked all of those different creators, and then it shot out a report. If we jump back over into the GitHub repo here, we can see here for the Daily Creator Scout, I have my report for today. All right, we can look at these like Mark's content, what's trending for Nate. We could see Claude Code just dropped routines, 24/7 agents. All right, good, keep going down. Substack, which is a bit different. And then we could see trending topics, Claude Code and AI web design, Claude Code routines, which we're talking about here. Little call outs about what creators are covering in the signal. And then it goes and it does deeper perplexity research, right? So it will take a look and kind of fan out and do more research on those different topics. And then at the end, what it's going to do is give you that general report about what's trending. But then what I find really powerful is it's going to take a look at your own system, your own Claude.md file, your own workspace, and then it's going to propose like unique angles that you can cover based off of your ideal client profiles or your audiences or your content, what it is that you do and your expertise. So Claude Code routines, but for my audience or for your audience, etc. So this skill, super powerful, especially when paired with these routines. I'm going to be running this every morning to see what's trending on YouTube. I'm going to be running my YouTube analytics one every morning to track growth. And then there are really just a couple, there are 5 things I really want to, talk about before I let you go build your own. And these are things that I learned testing these. So it's going to save you a lot of time, save you a couple little speed bumps here and there. The first is that your skills have to be in the repo, right? So if you've ever watched me, work before, or if you work in the UI of Claude Desktop, I like to use these plugins here. I put the plugins in. I have all my skills built into these, so I can just trigger them here in the UI, right? Well, for the routines, this is not going to work. So these skills actually have to be in the repo, because none of what you have here in the UI or in the desktop is going to carry over to the cloud. And because the routine clones your GitHub repo, that's all it has access to there, right? So everything that your routine needs to reference has to be committed to that repo. And this tripped me up on the first attempt, right? Because I thought that I would be able to just use the skills that are here on my desktop, but then I realized that as this is running in the cloud, it doesn't really have access to those skills that I have saved locally here on the desktop. The second thing I learned is that the MCP connectors, they worked perfectly. I thought maybe there would have to be, more setup or anything like that, but every connector that I had set up here on my desktop also, worked perfectly here for these routines. A lot of these are custom ones I built myself for YouTube, Perplexity, stuff like that. But there was no extra setup. I just connected it, once. I let it have access to the ones it needed, and it worked perfectly. The third thing that you should really do, or that I do, is explicitly in the prompt here, you could see that I tell it to push it to the main branch of the repo, right? Let's open this edit up here. That's because when you come down here to permissions, you are gonna, you can allow unrestricted branch pushes, meaning you remove those branch push restrictions. So Claude will be able to push this to any branch and not just put it on its own Claude branches, which then you would have to manually approve and stuff like that, right? So by enabling this, it allows it to just push it to my main repo so that later when I pick it back up, I don't have to do anything. It's done already, right? Even with that, enabled, I realized it was still trying to push it to the Claude branches. So a simple fix to that is just in here, put inside of your prompt to push it to the main branch if that's what you wanted to do, and it will, I didn't run into that problem after that. The fourth thing is that if you're going to run similar skills like this, or if you're going to use my skills for example, for like the daily creator scouting, or you do your YouTube analytics, I recommend just putting your reports directly in the skills. So Claude skills, they're not just the skill.md file, but inside of that, you can also have, in the bigger folder here, you can have the skill.md, but you can also have subfolders, right? For references, which is where we put our watch list, but you can also have another one for reports. And I like to just put all of my reports in there, because then, each routine is going to save to the reports folder. And then, the next morning's run is going to have access to yesterday's data, and so on. And that's how the deltas work. The knowledge literally is just compounding week after week, and you can see which topics are trending versus fading. So it's not like just a one-shot task. It's just compounding with each run. And then 5 is really like dual trigger mode. If you come over here, you can set your daily trigger for example, if it's a cron job running, but then you can really do this. You can trigger it by your own code. You could set up your own platforms. You can do your own GitHub events. You can manually trigger it as well over here just by clicking on the routine. And then where is it at here? We could click on the routine here. I don't even know here, runs. We could see the runs here. We could come up to routines, and then we can just run it manually right from the app as well. So you're not like stuck waiting around for the thing to run. You can trigger it manually, which is what I do, for example, with the creator scouting, because I have this running at 7 a.m., right? So anything that happens after 7 a.m. is only going to get picked up the next day. So if I'm out and about and I see like, oh, Claude Code routines just dropped at 1 p.m., I can just go trigger it manually, and it'll go look at what the other creators are doing. So those are really just 5 quick things that are small, but also worth knowing if you're going to set this up yourself. And these are the 2, routines that I just built very kind of quickly last night and this morning. But the pattern really applies to anything you'd want running on a schedule. Daily social media analytics, same structure, maybe just different connectors. Weekly newsletter topic research, maybe automated content becomes a million times better with these automations, SEO, client work, ghostwriting, whatever it is you do, right? The routine is the infrastructure. The skill file will define the job. You can write the instructions in Markdown, and the routine just executes on a schedule. That's it, in the cloud. And the part that matters most is that everyone, commits its output back to the repo, so the next run reads it, and the knowledge compounds, like I said already a bunch of times here. Previously, if you wanted to do, these, 24/7 automations or routines with Claude Code, if you were someone like me using the desktop and stuff like that, is you would have to have the always on, Mac Mini running 24/7, or locally, you would have to set up maybe some custom agent SDK pipelines. All of this stuff I do for my client work, but now routines makes this so much easier that I can run all of it in the cloud. So we're getting closer and closer to these full-blown automations with Claude Code without having to have all this extra infrastructure set up. So that's what I have for you. I'm going to put the free, free resources down below. So make sure to grab them, paste them right into your routine setup, and start building your own, and share with us. Drop some comments below on what you build, or if you have any routines that you want to see built, and we'll take a hit at it.